And we are live.
Welcome, everybody. Today is the 9th day of May of 2022, and this is our full council meeting. If you would help me get the meeting started with Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Mayor Densmore. Happy Mother's Day to all those folks that applies to. Has everyone had an opportunity to, let's see, first we got to do roll call of our members. Can you do that for us, Mr. Hurd?
Yes, Mr. Betcher.
Here.
Mrs. Cheney.
Here.
Mr. Fisher is absent. Mr. Knipp is absent. Ms. Snyder.
Here.
Mr. Van Hart. Here. And Mr. Fisher and Mr. Knipp are both absent this evening.
Do we have a motion to excuse either or both?
Motion to excuse both.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Without objection, I'll say that's unanimous. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the agenda this evening, and does anyone have any amendments to it? I would like to add Captain Felser to the top of the agenda right after we adopt our agenda, so that he doesn't have to stick around if he doesn't want to.
We will have to make it. Something happens.
May 9th. Some of the next page.
I was moving him to the top of
Oh,
the agenda.
gotcha.
That's what I was doing. So is there a motion for that? Okay.
You second.
All right. So to accept as amended, correct? All right.
Yeah.
So all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. I take that as unanimous. All right. I'll turn it over to Mr. Felser, Captain Felser.
Yes.
Thank you.
As he said, I'm Captain Felser. I'm the Unit 2 shift captain today. I'm here in Denny's absence. He's up at the station right now doing some PR work with Silverton community. He sent me with a couple of bullet points here to just kind of go over, and if you guys have any other questions after that, I can do my best to answer. So far, fund volumes are about what we expected. This morning we did have a meeting or a training with Rabbi Mendy. He came in and did like a 2-hour training with us over the Jewish laws and customs and courtesies and whatnot for us to get used to, even though we've run into this community in the past. It's just not as much as we are now, obviously. So just kind of going over that. And there was quite a big turnout for our department as well. And I think there might be another one scheduled later, but I can't confirm that. We have been coming down here doing our spring hydrant checks. That way, one, we're obviously taking care of the hydrants, but we're also, everybody's getting more familiar with the area that hasn't worked in here around this area in the past. I'd say there's a pretty large part of our department that has worked for Gulf Manor, Little Miami, or even us over the years that is familiar enough. But so we're trying to get some new people down here so they know the trees a little bit better as well.
I've seen you guys around since before this.
Okay, great. And you'll also be happy to know that we have extra people on the 15th for your soapbox derby, so which is our shift as well. So I'll be around. Chief Meter actually coordinated most of that, so we'll move people around as best as we can and probably try to at least stage 1 medic unit down here, so that way if anything happens, it's staffed and it's staying down here. At least that was the last plan that I heard. So yeah, things could change in a week. So that was all he sent me with. There was some run numbers if you'd like for me to go over that. If not, if there's any other questions.
Yeah, I have a question about, I know that our community is concerned with the transition on response time. And I've been an advocate of us kind of holding off until we have some good data, like at least, a couple months worth or so.
Right.
I was wondering that question about how many months worth do you think is a good chunk to be able to make a good assessment of that? And
so what is this, May? We started March 1st. So I'd say by the end of this month, you'd probably be able to get a good idea.
All right.
But with the summer months coming up, obviously everything tends to get a little bit busier. So if you wanted to wait till like maybe the end of June, but that would also just be something that Chief Meter is our data collection guy, so
Right.
he might have a better idea, but I think that
I'm presuming I could go to him just one-on-one and ask him where we stand now, and then
Oh,
maybe look at something more
Yeah,
publicly
sure.
when we're, as we
you'd
get
be
more
more
data.
than happy to help.
So I don't know if the council members had, I just posted this, I received this morning, but this is the monthly run report for DPS that's broken down by community. Some of the things that I looked at when I received this morning was what the total number of runs were for the various communities. Looks like obviously Silverton and Deer Park are the greatest users of services, and Columbia Township, Gulf Manor. There has not been, as to my knowledge, as the last time Mr. Lancer looked at it before he left, we haven't been using mutual aid in the village of Gulf Manor. You guys have been catching everything.
Yeah, we've actually been doing a really good job about it. Since we've added more staff since everything with this happening and everything with Columbia Township, we were running with, during the day, we've got 3 additional, and at night it's 2 additional. We used to be 4, 5, now it's 7 all day. And that doesn't include the chiefs, which we used to kind of rely on as well, in the past. With that being said, the way that our staffing works out, for the most part, now we have 3 ambulances, one of the ones that we received from you, that we've actually been able to get out the door as well. The other day, we had all 3 of our ambulances at Jewish Hospital. They weren't super excited about it, but I mean, we were able to get it out the door. And we've, as a department in the past, we did years ago rely heavily on volunteers, people coming from home, shorter staffing, and we've been kind of a busier department. So we're kind of used to running around and getting things taken care of. So it's not necessarily out of the ordinary that some of us that have been around for a while can get that kind of thing organized.
Great.
And you are at full staff at this point, right? I think.
As far as full-time members?
Yeah.
Yes, right now, as far as the goal, I think there's a goal of putting 1 more on later on in the year, but we kind of wanted to make sure that the budget and everything was, I know that was Chief's goal, was to make sure that the budget worked out before we got in over our head. But we fell in with part-time personnel, and the part-time pool has been really stepping up, and guys are excited to be making more runs, getting a little bit more experience, and so it's been working out. I can't speak for them, but I've been enjoying myself.
One of the things that I appreciated about this report, so when you take a look at page 2, there's actually a report of fire loss by district. I think this will be a good piece of data for council to keep track of, so we know what's happening with that piece of the business. I think we know more of what happens with life calls, EMS kinds of things.
Right.
Hopefully we don't have fires, but it's nice to be able to see that.
Right.
So we appreciate that.
Yeah,
So a level of detail that we haven't had in the past. So we're very happy with your reports.
Great.
We'll let you know if there's any other data that we feel that we would like you to work on. But all I've heard is very positive reports from everyone on the data that we're getting. So thank you. Any questions from council members? Anybody?
Would you like to introduce your friends?
Sure. You guys want to stand up? Sure. On the left here is John Gray. He's my operator tonight of the Quint. He's been around for what, 9, 10 years? 12. 12. And then Andrew Vance, he's been on for a couple of years now. He's our EMT riding backwards tonight. Yeah, we got a handful more back at the station finishing up eating dinner and cleaning up for us, so everything's spotless when we get home.
Awesome. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. You are welcome to stay if you wish. We've got exciting stuff to talk about.
I think I'll excuse us if you don't mind.
Understood.
I waited to eat. So I'll come back and eat.
So one thing that, I think we talked about this when Chief Meter was here last month, but we have a huge community festival that's going to take place on Sunday, September 18th.
Okay.
We'll get information to you about that, but that's going to be, start with a community picnic and end with fireworks. So
Okay.
we'll be having
Since September
18th.
September 18th, that's a Sunday. And if you squint, you can see everything that's on that board there.
I was
So-
trying to make sense of it when I was saying. Great. Well, if you guys don't have anything else for me or anything I can take back to the chief.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
We'll see you on Sunday.
Right. It's nice to meet all of you. I'm sure we'll see you around.
I have no other registered speakers for this evening. Is anybody no different than that? No. Minutes to be approved for April 25th, 2022. Has everyone had time to look those over? And are there any suggested amendments, anything that looked like it was left out that needs to be in there, or anything stated incorrectly?
So you did you adopt the agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
I made the motion. You seconded
I think so, but I don't remember.
it? No, I made the.
It's okay, I'll check the video. We have video now, so.
Just put it in there that way. I'll make a motion for the minutes to be approved.
I do have one point of discussion, since Ms. Cheney stood in for Mr. Enns or for Mayor Densmore. Should that be noted in the minutes?
It should absolutely be. And I apologize for not just right off the top thanking Ms. Cheney
Oh,
for
it's
stepping in for me. I appreciate the Vice
You're
Mayor
welcome.
doing it for me. Thank you.
And the minutes do reflect that.
All right,
Okay.
very good. All right, so with that, we have a motion to approve it and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
You guys unanimous, thank you. And so we had on here and actually I guess we should have struck this when we were talking about the agenda. Officer Jamie Reynolds was scheduled to be transferred from part-time to full-time, was going to do his oath here. And I had memorized all the facts about his good service to the community. And turns out he has COVID, so we're going to wait till he's well with that, then do a private ceremony, and then he'll come in and do a ceremonial piece with me and for photos at our next council meeting is what we're hoping for. All right, so we certainly will wish him and his family the best fortune with recovering health. So. So my report, I've got a couple things that I wanted to touch on. The first one has to do with some correspondence from Duke to me as a community leader. You council members may have also received this. Basically, the billing system, they're changing over. They've been doing this for the past month or so, and they're anticipating that, residents may notice that, and if they have questions about that, for us to relay those questions or any difficulties with that, for us to relay that to them. I've not heard anything, haven't heard any complaints about the changes in the billing system. I haven't noticed it myself. I'm on an automatic pay though, so I'm not really looking at those kind of things very closely. But if any of you hear from residents saying, one, spread the word that we are taking feedback on this, all right, because Duke does want to know. So if you hear anything, let folks know that they can tell you their feedback on that.
Still getting.
Yeah, still, unfortunately, they're still billing, right? The next piece has to do with a Hamilton County broadband survey. So this has to do, there's my understanding is this has to do with some funds that the state of Ohio has and has been providing to try to increase broadband service in areas that don't typically have good broadband service, all right? And so Hamilton County is surveying folks to find out, well, in what areas of Hamilton County do people feel that they're not getting good broadband service? So they have another item to spread the word about. They have an email address, or actually I'll say a website that you can do a survey on your service, all right? Whether you feel that it's fast enough, that kind of thing.
And I assume that's regarding your cell phone, your personal computer. Is it the speed? Is that?
I'm not familiar with everything that's on that survey. It says, do you always have the high-speed connection necessary to conduct all your business online? Do you have plans to open or expand a business, but you're not sure your current connections will support growth?
Okay.
Do you know what your download and upload speeds are compared to what they should be?
Okay.
All right, so I'm thinking in terms of layman speak, they told me I have 3G, but I can't, or they tell me I have 4 to 5, what's rate's at 1.5, I think, yeah. They tell me I have 5Gs, but, I can't watch Netflix without it spinning or something like that, right? So that website is hamiltoncountyohio.gov/broadband. If if you want to do that survey yourself or let other folks know about.
I posted the link to that out on Go Golf Manor yesterday,
Perfect.
asking people to do their thing.
All right. So where I currently, we've talked about the lead pipe replacement. That's our plans for that in the Village of Golf Manor. They are, and we've discussed before about how we're aligning that with our road projects. So as we're doing road projects, they're coming in and taking care of lead lines that still exist in Golf Manor. And our number is it 21
Correct.
households?
Yes.
21. And along Canterbury, we have plans to be doing some road work. And I've noticed that I recently got a letter from Cincinnati Waterworks about their intention to do some
Everybody
work.
got that.
Okay, so everybody got that, not just the people along the. So this doesn't really send the message that's the correct one, though, my understanding with the administrator in terms of what the homeowner is going to be responsible for. We're putting some things in place with regard to that. We set aside some money to assist homeowners with the cost of replacing lead lines that are on the private side. It's something that I've been working with the administration on for since I was a council member, getting this done. So very happy about that program. If you have people coming to you concerned about this, please let them know to contact me or contact the administration with our plans to provide assistance for that.
On that note, there was an article this week, I think, in the Inquirer, that GCWW is looking to adopt a rule concerning this program to now waive that homeowner's participation.
Right. My understanding
They've not
was
done
that
it
they had, my understanding was that they had already done it, but then I was corrected on that. I guess it's been other areas in Ohio
Right.
have done that. So
Is that
It's
me in terms of my ongoing?
Well,
It should.
there was a complaint when they were talking about it because people who had already participated in the program were complaining, saying, I'm now being assessed, why aren't you forgiving mine? And GCWW was saying, well, we're not really sure where we are, maybe we'll be. So they're looking to, as part of a broader with state of Ohio, to waive these. But there's also some complaints that I think we're going back to the city manager's office about what about the people who already incurred that cost and have this on their tax bill? Why aren't we picking them up and waiving it? So it's kind of one of those,
Yeah.
stay tuned.
right.
'Cause I know
Right.
Yeah, I happen to be one of them as well. As far as I know, I mean, no one's actually kind of gone and scratched the stuff that's underground. But just by their records, it hadn't been replaced.
that brings us, the only question I had was, when I went through it before, somewhere I heard that they have their records, but they're not necessarily
Accurate.
accurate. So what about those people that may have a lead line, but they don't have it marked? Is there?
Yeah, my understanding of the process is that when they're digging these things up, they're looking at it before they're gonna try to send, whatever the actual process is, they send another tube inside the tube, the existing tube, I think.
Well, if you go back to when we looked at the program a couple of years ago, they said that when they replaced the main, they would look at each private connection. And if the private connection at that time was found to have lead contamination, they would work at that time with the property owner. Those who wanted to accelerate the process could sign up now and replace their connection line rather than waiting for the main line to be replaced. I think you may have been one that said, I don't want to wait till the main line. I'd like to get it done now.
Yeah, I actually had an issue with a drain, which was near the water line, and they told me it was lead. So it was a fortuitous, there was another problem they were doing, and that's when I found out. But the records from the water from GCWW matched that. They said my house had a lead line too, so they just went.
One of,
I think what we're gonna find is they do new lines, they may be waiving the cost for that homeowner to get connected. They'll still do private contractors, but they may be waiving it rather than assessing it. Those that are doing it on their own, that may be the devil in the detail with GCWW as to whether they go back and help them. But again, this was an article and I think they've kind of waffled back and forth on
Yeah.
where they are and what they're gonna do.
Well, we did it because of that program that they offered.
Right.
So it was
Right.
kind of-
Yeah, they for a long time, they've offered like a portion of that to cover a portion of it.
Right.
It's just relatively new that they're saying,
They
Covering the whole
covered
thing.
up to a certain amount, I think.
Right,
yeah.
like half the cost up to a cap, and then you could spread that amount over a period of 10 years.
Right.
They would pay for it and you would pay them back.
one of the warnings for folks is that in the absence of knowing for sure, what a lot of people do is they go and they get, everyone in their family blood tested to see if, there's lead contamination. And we've done this multiple times because we have kids in our household and everything's fine. One of the dangerous pieces about taking that information as gospel, however, is that whenever there's construction going on and things get shook up a bit, that can totally change in terms that you may not have a contaminated line because of the way the line has, I don't know, calcium deposits, whatever it is on it over time. It may not be putting lead in your water, but with construction, it can change things up and suddenly it is. So it's important to make people aware that of that potential.
So at this point, the only way you would get steered toward it is if their records say you have a lead line, or you have to dig down and actually test it. It seems to me, I heard that is the only way. Now, it's coming back to me now, because they could have been replaced at some point. So what's in your house may be different than what is farther out,
Yeah.
or something like that.
So when
My
there's
my understanding was that like if you were hiring someone, doing it on your own, a contractor to do this, that part of their best practice is to actually test it before they're, charging you money on it. I know that Grayson Side Waterworks has been sending out a lot of information about how you can test it yourself, look at doing scratch tests. And if you don't know, take a picture of it and send it to them and they'll let you know. But yeah, my understanding is in terms of the records of it, is they kind of said, this is by our records, but it's not necessarily what's underground. They don't know.
So when they launched that website, and I believe this is when you were on council, they sent information to everybody to test your lines. And we did that. We tested our water and then went down and scraped the little thing at the wall. So hopefully people did that.
Yeah.
So the Waterworks has reached out to everybody who's a customer to ask them to do that. This is a second program that I think is to what Mr. Donlin has said is being offered, which is why I think everybody got this letter again, just kind of as a reminder. Our intent and it's still the plan, to use ARPA funding to take care of those, I think it was originally 23 properties that were on that list. The one that was on Greenland is a part of that. So.
With the testing in your house, I mean, what I've heard on that is that that can be unreliable. The one coming inside your house isn't necessarily what's underground outside your house. That's still on the private side. So that's the piece about, ultimately you got to dig to be for sure if you have that level of concern about it. So just once again, tell people to, either call myself or the administration if they've got some questions about this in terms of what we're doing here in Belfast. And I believe that for today, that is all that I have. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Hurst.
And you get a double dose from me this evening as the administrator and the fiscal officer. So if you live on Vera, you notice that they started the road project today. Restarted it. They are moving the cast iron casings for the utility holes. The plan is to have the asphalt in by the end of May. So we're hoping that the entire project is done by the end of May, which would include the painting of the poles, any new signage that needs to go up, the improvements to the sidewalks, those kinds of things. One of the things that we found out is that construction material shortages are affecting the timing of our upcoming road projects. So our engineer has the plans done for Englewood, Canterbury, and for Elbrook. However, water pipe is in short demand, and until they can figure out what is available, they cannot put it out for bid.
Short supply,
So we're waiting.
short supply, high demand.
Short supply, that's what they're saying. You may have noticed that there is a sinkhole at Cedarbrook on Lasanaville. That developed last week. Actually, there was a little tiny hole there that's been there for several months, that the water last week completely washed that out. So that is scheduled for repair this week. There will be some disruption at the intersection as the catch basin needs to be completely removed, and they'll replace it with a cast concrete basin. This is an example of why when we did that street prior to 2016, we need to go in and do water lines and catch basins, because none of that was done. The water line was done, but the catch basins and the curbs were not done on Lasanaville. And what we're seeing is on streets where that was done, they're crumbling. So in this next road project, we'll pick up on Elbrook, but we may have to very well at some point in time go back in and take a look at redoing Lasanaville, because there are a couple of other catch basins that are starting to crumble. And it's interesting because they're made out of brick and mortar as opposed to concrete. So that's the
Pretty
case
old.
of what happened over here on Weehee, but that one will get picked up when we do that project.
Those like original ones then?
I'm sorry,
If they're made of brick?
That's what I was thinking. They must be pretty old.
it's brick and cinder block, mostly brick. That's how old those are. The Soapbox Derby event occurs this Sunday, May 15th on Bremont Avenue, east of Fair Oaks and west of Lasanaville. Residents and if their children wish to participate can go to the website to still sign up. This is a quick event for the village. There's minimal effort on our part, which is a great showcase for a fun event for the kids. And again, this year Mark's Bagels will be present to sell their products. They'll be in the parking lot at across the street. And this is again on a Sunday. Just a reminder that the 4th of July parade will again take place on July 4th. And we want to make sure that we encourage residents to participate. Sergeant Reed's getting a lineup of various vendors and organizations to participate, which will be a lead up to our September 18th event, Celebration 75, which will take place in Volunteer Park on Sunday, September 18th. The steering committee is pulling together. There will be a community picnic as well as a safety day presentation with various booths and information, in addition to a petting zoo and a concert and fireworks at the end of the day.
Is the 4th of July just the parade?
There will not be a picnic at the 4th of July this year. I know the Orthodox community has done their own picnic the last two 4th of Julys during the pandemic. In fact, I was going to make sure, we need to make sure that Mr. Fisher is aware, Mr. Hart, Frenoff, that if they wish to do that again this year, they're more than welcome to. But we're pushing all of our effort to the September event. Let's see. We asked the executive committee to reschedule the working session for the discussion of the employee review system. And the date that we picked was Thursday, May 26th at 6:30 p.m. And we would ask that council would make a motion and approve that date so we can set that.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sounds unanimous.
Okay. Really nothing new unless Mr. Donaldson has something additional to say about the economic development efforts. We are moving forward on the two properties that we have been looking at, and we're in various phases of looking at remediation, demolition, getting contracts, those kinds of things. So we'll probably have something more specific to report at the next council meeting on those issues.
Yeah, I think by then we should have our environmental assessment reports back. And if there is any question of asbestos, they will then refer us to someone to test for asbestos. I think when we got a preliminary evaluation on the Weehee Road property, the contractor said that there would be an additional cost for asbestos, and we would have to certify that. So that's a process that can be done 3 months from now, 6 months from now. We're gonna probably buy the property anyway. It's just part of the demolition cost. Right now, a significant portion of that is paid by the county. But we're dotting i's and crossing t's. The big issue is to make sure there's no environmental contamination, which we should know and be able to close, hopefully the first part of June, and acquire both properties.
So what we're hoping is that the monies that were left over from the Bean property for demolition can also be covered to deal with the Baker property. So kind of a 2-for-1 deal is what we're looking for there.
And Mr. Bean assures me he is working on removing things from the building.
Could you reiterate the process that will occur if we find that there is environmental contamination?
If there is, this is a phase 1, what we're doing right now, which is a check of the records and inspection of the site to determine if any prior uses may have raised a suspicion for environmental contamination. So if they go back in the records, the site was a gas station. They would then go further and test. We doubt we're going to find anything. So just the phase 1 would say we have no record that there be any contamination there. I have a copy of a phase 1, which was done 10, 11 years ago on that property when another neighbor was looking to acquire it. I'm talking about the Weehee Road property. And they gave a clean report at that time. But part of the process is the inspection to see if they notice anything that would cause them suspicion. But the big cost is if there's remediation. We don't think there will be. The cost, and I wouldn't say it's big, but it is, a cost is the asbestos. We don't believe there's asbestos on the corner, but there is asbestos in the building material because of the age of the property on Weehee Road. That has to be dealt with by a contractor who has to contain the asbestos and then remove it to a new site for disposal. So there may be some added demolition cost on that, which is why the county's authorized demolition.
Is this, so my experience with this is with, residential kind of properties where if remediation is required, that shows up in, your inspection report, you can go to the seller of the property and say, I want you to cover this as part of it. Is that how it works in the business as well?
Yes, we have reserved that right, the final contingency being environmental assessment to our satisfaction. But we have a fallback that the county in the budget for the acquisition of the property has allotted a certain amount of money for environmental cleanup. We may devote that environmental cleanup to asbestos removal versus remediating petrochemical contamination.
Yeah.
So we're just getting the report because of being public monies to make sure that when we acquire title, we're not buying into a real big problem.
Right.
But preliminarily, doesn't look like either one of those sites were ever used for gas station, which is the typical contamination.
Right.
Or any, like Hilton Davis, it's a huge contamination problem. There was no manufacturing over there that one would say, well, that could have led to contamination.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Okay, moving into the good news section here. I mentioned in the executive committee that the village liability insurance audit came back with 100% compliance by the village of our requirements from Highland, which is our insurance liability broker for the Ohio plan. Our agent remarked that this was something that rarely ever happens. And I personally wish to thank the employees of the village of Gulf Manor who have worked very hard to make sure that we are compliant for a safe and secure environment for our employees and for our residents. So that was a pretty good thing that happened last week. The other really good thing that happened last week was regarding health insurance for 2023. We're seeing our investment in joining the healthcare benefits plan with the Center of Local Government Benefits Pool pay off, in that there will be a 0% increase in medical costs for next year. That's benefit year August 1st, 2022 to July 31st, 2023.
Are the benefits just as good?
Benefits are exactly the same.
Wow.
This means that we will retain our employee medical plans with United Healthcare. In addition, we will continue to offer this year a PPO dental plan Dental Care Plus is the company that we use. They were recently bought out by another company, and many individual dental companies stopped using that insurance. However, they are offering a Dental Care Plus PPO that you can use either in-network or out-of-network, which is at minimal extra cost to the employees. So what that does is it allows everybody to be fully covered and still retain their dentists, which we thought was a really good feature of that. We also will continue with our vision insurance with IMED, which is one of the premier vision insurance broker in Greater Cincinnati. We'll have cost details for the Finance Committee, hopefully in 2 weeks in preparation for open enrollment, which will start incredibly in June, which is something we've never been able to accomplish early. Wanted to make you aware that we are making a vendor change with our payroll provider. We've experienced a multitude of operational problems with our current vendor, Paycor. Paycor has failed to be responsive to our needs and has levied a considerable increase in costs for using their services. Because of the problems we've had with operations, for the last several months, we've been evaluating other payroll processing providers and have identified and chosen Paychex as someone who will meet the needs for the Village of Gulf Manor. Their services, operations, and customer service assistance are better aligned to the needs of our operations. As a result, Paula and her team will be moving forward with converting to Paychex by the end of next month. Doing a payroll conversion was not something we were really interested in doing again, because we just did this a couple of years ago. But the problems that we've had include things like inaccurate pay, very difficult to get corrected when that happens, and people just not appearing once we add them to the system. And they can't diagnose and can't figure out why it's happening. So it's time for us to move on. The other thing is, when we saw the price increase, that really was like, okay, this isn't working, it's time to go. A reminder, yet again, we're still looking for appointees to the Board of Tax Review. Hopefully we haven't had any needs for that. Wanted to advise council that the ARPA funds filing was completed by the April 30th deadline, and we are compliant. When it comes to STAR certification, we've been talking about investing our funds to try and get some interest on our reserve. The application was submitted, just did something here, on May 2nd. As identified in the last Finance Committee meeting, we will recommend funds to be invested at the time, coinciding with our fiscal 2023 recommendations. And the departments, as we speak, are working on the 2023 budgets. Finally, there is a 2 mil levy renewal that is coming due in November 2022. This is a 5-year 2 mil tax levy for current expenses, which expires at the end of this year. Just for your history, the levy was originally requested by council in 2003 and was last passed by the voters in November of 2018. Not to be missed, we would like to thank our residents and the voters for supporting the village's 10 mil replacement levy for fire services. What I find to be very satisfying is that passed 2-1. And to me, that says that our residents are putting faith in how we're managing the village. And although sometimes the message was kind of convoluted and wasn't exactly clear, I think people heard us. So what's nice about that is it puts the cap on the end of our transition to Deer Park Silverton. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
All right.
Questions?
Are you doing the police report as well, I hear?
I can move into that if you would like.
No other
Chief-
questions from audience or from council members on fiscal report? No, okay.
So for the mayor's court report for April 2022, Chief Campbell has reported $4,322 are going to the Village of Gulf Manor. $1,191.50 to the state of Ohio. $236.04 to other, for a total receipts of $5,749.54, again, for the month of April 2022.
Does anybody have any questions about the mayor's court report for April?
So we need a motion and a second to accept it.
Motion to accept the mayor's court report.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No objection, I'll take that as unanimous. Thank you.
Chief Campbell also asked me to report to you this evening that Mayor's Court will expand to 2 court sessions per month starting in June. They did do two court sessions a month up until probably the early part of last year, when the need dwindled down to only needing to do it once a month. Cases have picked up post-pandemic, so it makes sense at this time to go back to 2 sessions. So in the month of June, we will have court on June 6th, which is a Monday, and then also on Monday, June 20th. And that is the end of the police report.
Any questions that we can pass along to Chief Campbell? No, we had this will probably be covered in the executive committee report. We had the opportunity to speak with Chief Campbell and a vendor of a potential of a technology that we've been testing out. And let's see, Mr. Donilon, solicitor report.
Thank you. As you know, we do not have any legislation tonight. Can't remember the last time
Wow.
we had that. But just a couple points. We sent out to you what was the recommendation from the Planning Commission to update the zoning code on fences and certain setback requirements, driveways, and so forth. We need to have a motion to set a public hearing on that, and we have to give notice in the Inquirer 30 days in advance. So if we want to do this June 13, I need a motion tonight to set that, and then Mr. Hurth hopefully can have that posted to the Inquirer this week, so we meet our publication deadline of Saturday. I know June 13th is a packed night. This should hopefully not take long. We can walk you through it at that time and have council adopt the recommendations. And at that time, then we'll go forward with legislation. But before you make that motion, we also need to consider having a public hearing that night for the budget.
Correct.
Because the budget will be due in probably the following week.
Actually, the budget is due on July 20th. So we could do the budget in July. I would like to do it in June, just in case there's any, I'd like to have it in front of the Finance Committee in June, in case there's any adjustments we need to make.
Yeah, the statute requires that we have a hearing, which is usually very perfunctory, and that is for council to take any public comments relative to the budget. So it makes sense to have that public hearing that night, which may be 5 minutes. But we're going to be stacking up that night, a public hearing on zoning, the public hearing on the budget, and I think a dual of finance and executive committee.
Correct.
So not knowing what the agenda may be for executive committee or finance, we could set the public hearing on these at 6:30 and 6:45.
That would work.
And then go right into council. So would that be the motion to have it 6:30 for the planning commission, 6:45 for the budget, and then immediately go into the council meeting?
That's fine by me, but I will be on vacation.
Well,
Apparently,
that-
very important.
You're the one who should make the motion to make
Yeah.
sure everybody else is working while you are on vacation.
That's right.
Is,
So moved.
it has been, well, I guess we'll see if there's a second discussion here.
June 13th. It's the night we have of our June council meeting. There's a lot of things to stack up that night. If we defer the planning commission referral to July, then these changes to the zoning code will not take effect until September, October. There's no urgency that I know of on the planning commission, so if you don't want to stack them both up that night,
That's one and two.
it just makes me, I don't think either one is going to be a long public hearing.
So that brings to mind,
Mhm.
if Miss Snyder is not gonna be here, what's happening with Miss
I
Cheney?
won't.
And are we going to be able to count that the other council members will be here that evening for a quorum?
And I have to check my schedule because I may not be here. My vacation's in June as well.
Uh-oh.
I would say set it if we don't have a quorum that night. The only thing that is impacted really is the budget hearing. We would probably have to set another night to do the budget hearing, again by statute, before we take it to the first reading, the final reading. So I would set it and let's see how things shape up. The folks will let us know maybe that first week of June if they will not be here, that we can adjust accordingly.
If the mayor and vice mayor are
Yeah,
not
that would-
here, who runs the meeting?
Well, what we should do also tonight is appoint a mayor pro tem in the event both are absent. That's what the charter allows, that the mayor, in the absence of the mayor, the vice mayor, in the absence of both, the council can appoint a mayor pro tem among their members who serves as the mayor for that particular time. So first would be, do you want to set the dual hearings that evening, 6:30 for planning commission referral and 6:45 for budget?
Do we have a motion for that? Sorry.
I was just
Whatever
going
you
to
do.
say, we had, it was previously discussed in executive and I think in full council a while back about how we have, when we move into the summer, only having one council meeting per month and how sometimes that can cause such a buildup that we're unable to, or some members have reported that we're unable to adequately vet some of the issues that have come before us. So I just want to put that out there as how we had, how that conversation had ended was, well, we have the opportunity to set two council members, if two council meetings if we want to during the summer. So I'm just putting that out there as far as a council option for June. And then we have a motion to go ahead and stack
I
them.
did.
You did first. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sounds
So who
unanimous.
seconded, Sharon? Matt did.
Matt.
And
Sharon,
then
who sounded like that?
just as a backup in the event the mayor and the vice mayor are absent that night, do you want to make a motion to appoint a mayor pro tem for the
I will
evening?
be around that evening.
I'll nominate Matt and make the motion.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, what was
for
that
your service.
motion?
To appoint Matt as mayor pro tem if both the mayor and the vice mayor are absent for that meeting.
Who made the motion?
I did.
And Sharon seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, it was unanimous. Thank you for your service, Mr. Bishop.
And
Pulling you back in.
you can't get out. Just to that point, it's difficult, as Mr. Hirth knows, to both participate in a meeting and take minutes. So to show you how the sausage is made, oftentimes I don't put out there as a motion to correct the minutes or pass them as corrected. If I give notes to Mr. Hirth to say, dot this I and cross this T. A point in order of the last minutes, we have the motion to suspend the rules. Mr. Lander did not record that everybody voted to suspend the rules. So I will give those notes to Mr. Hirth. So when you sign them, you'll see that if anybody says, well, I would really like a motion to correct the minutes, we could do that now, or just trust that we're just clarifying.
So this is why, so when the minutes are done, there's a Word file copy that we keep, then we make the PDF, then it gets posted on the website, then copies have to be made to post. So that's why I ask for minutes. I give you a date. Please give us corrections by this date, because that gives me time to do all that. The one thing that I want to do, and this wasn't happening, was I wasn't getting the minutes until the day before I was putting the council meeting together. My intent is I will have minutes done tomorrow morning and have these out to you, which is, I think I did that for something recently, I think the planning commission meeting. Because honestly, I don't like sitting and listening to these meetings over and over and over when I forget. They're less entertaining the second time. So taking a look at those when you get them and letting me know if there are changes up front would be greatly appreciated. because it just helps in the making of the sausage.
Yeah, I mean, the nominal corrections that I will give are, like, there was a motion to approve ordinance 2022-2. The ordinance title said as an emergency, so it'll say move to approve as an emergency will be added, that little phrase. Then again, motion to suspend the rules, and it said approved. We'll go in and say, because it's a roll call vote, and it says roll call vote, so we'll list that out. So if you see it, you go, wait a minute, that's not what I saw the other night. I want to let you know that. So if you feel compelled to say, well, I will approve those as corrected, we could do that, but I don't look at those as correcting the substance so much as, again, dotting i's and crossing t's.
Well, I appreciate the ideal of getting these out to council members much earlier, which you're committed to do, and I appreciate that, because I know that myself, and I presume everybody else has had difficulty with when we receive them the day before, feeling comfortable approving the minutes when we haven't all had an opportunity to really go through
Well,
them.
back in the old days, we used to get the minutes at the council meeting and had to sit here and read them and correct them live. So,
Mhm.
In the old days, we would get them in 3 or 4 months later. Or we were always saying we need to get these corrected. And it's, again, it is a difficult task to take down all of these notes and participate in meetings. So you're listening, typing, and trying to capture.
Remember when I used to do them?
Mm.
So I always
well,
try to
that brings
help.
up an interesting question, because until we get the fiscal officer position filled, if something happens, not planning on going anywhere, but there was a committee meeting about a month ago that I couldn't attend because I was sick. That was your committee.
Uh-oh.
And somebody's, if I can't be here, somebody's gotta be willing to take the minutes. And I think we have a pretty simple process for doing that, using the spreadsheet that we use, but somebody's gotta be trained to be able to do this. Sharon has done it before. I think we did the grid when you did it.
Yeah, I did. God, for months. So
Yeah.
I'm fine to do them in your app if I'm here for council and for finance, and if I'm here for executive, I can do that. You just gotta give me a heads up. But I can't come to like during the workday meetings and take
That's
minutes.
good to know, thank
But
you.
yeah, if you leave, just give me some time to let me know that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And maybe
Okay.
a good device to do that on or something like that.
There's always the option to recruiting from the audience. And I don't see the audience jumping in to participate.
For
Yeah,
those
that's-
viewing, we have one
That
member.
tree's
in the
growing
audience.
out.
So, but I don't mind in
I appreciate
your
that.
absence if I need to. I can step in and do
I've
that.
wondered if there's third party, it seems like it'd be a great gig
I don't-
if you were someone that just like, that was your job, that you go around to municipalities and say, I'll give your minutes for you.
Andy told me that's a thing.
Yeah, I would think
It's
that
gotta
that
be
would be.
There is software that's out there, but it's very expensive.
Yeah.
And it's just, so there's an article about the Forest Hills School District was just sued by a guy who lives in northern Ohio for not being transparent in their meetings. And one of the things that they were stating was that the minutes were not complete enough. And apparently this guy he goes around suing people because he doesn't like their minutes. It makes money. So I think what Mr. Donald and I have talked about is we always make sure that we are very complete in the motions. We try to add bullet points to give flavor to why decisions were made, but we don't copy down everything that was said. So I have a problem hearing, first of all. Secondly, trying to be a part of the conversation and capture everything. But I think if somebody who's actually doing this, it's not that cumbersome to do these minutes.
No.
And I've wondered, I know that we've discussed this before, but I need a refreshing on it. With us videotaping our council meetings, why can't we just keep those in the cloud forever and not have it be considered the minutes, but to refer people that if you want further detail, you can go back into the archives and watch the video of the council meeting.
People can do that. That is not the official record. The official
Right,
record
right.
are the minutes.
Yeah.
But if someone has a question, they can go back into the archives and review it. oftentimes with these lawsuits involved are where boards do not appropriately articulate the reason for executive session. That's the argument
That
for
was-
transparency.
Yeah.
And I always make sure that when we make that motion, we articulate the various requirements of 121.22, such as motion to go into executive session to discuss compensation for a public official or public employee. Too many boards just say motion for executive session for matters of personnel. That's troublesome. And I think if you attended that CLG training, that's one of the points. They said you have to go into spelling it out. In that Claremont County case before the Supreme Court now is arguing over what you have to say. That's the biggest problem. The only other time we've gone into executive session is very typically litigation. We had an executive session a couple meetings ago to talk about pending litigation. That is absolutely something that has to be confidential. And then when we've gone into executive session to discuss the purchase or sale of real estate, because obviously you can't go into a public session and say, well, why don't we offer this? And then it hampers your negotiations. So my point is, when you see these, the final version that's signed may just have some I dotting and T crossing. If you are concerned enough because of litigation, you can make a motion now to say they prove these as corrected with Mr. Donlan's notes, and that's what you will see for the mayor to sign. And that is a lot of I dotting and T crossing. But if you want to make that motion, that's fine.
Is there a motion?
What's the motion?
To add those corrections that I will give Mr. Hurth as an example, as an emergency under one phrase, listing the specific vote under another section.
So hang on before anybody talks.
I would ask for that motion.
But I will give these to Mr. Hurth.
That's to be approved. So I'm gonna pop this in prior to motion to approve.
As corrected then.
Motion to approve as corrected.
Right.
So we have it. Motion was by Ms. Cheney, second by Mr. Van Horn. Does that still stand?
Yes. And all in favor, aye, as corrected. Are you affirming that all in favor is corrected?
So there was a first and a second, correct? Who was this time, right now, right?
It was the same.
Okay.
Okay.
So aye as corrected.
All those, okay.
And then asking you, if, when I get these, typically I would send them to Mr. Lanzer. In his absence, I'll be sending them to Mr. Hurth. Do you want to see those prior to the meeting to see what sausage I've given them in the making?
No.
I would,
I will
think
look-
if there's anything glaring, we would probably.
I will look them over when I'm signing, and if you trust my judgment to just say, wait a minute, you know.
I'll make note just during our meeting that I
So-
sent some corrections. which-
We have a triple quality control because Andy would create the minutes, I would look at the minutes, then they go to Terry, then they go to you guys. So, and that'll continue.
For not having any legislation, that is the end of my long.
I do have a quick
Thank you, Mr.
question. So as we update the zoning code in regards to fences, if something is not in compliance and we update the code, that gets grandfathered in, correct?
Correct.
So my concern, I just want to, if it's something that's been cited and the variance was denied, i.e. the Elbrook property, that's still out of compliance.
Correct. And we have to still be, and I think Mr. Putoff is working with that party to help get compliance.
Okay.
Because if I remember, the difficulty they had was, it seemed like the contractor was,
Joe Schmo from Dillon.
Are we talking the Bremont property?
Yeah.
I think you
they
said
had a
that.
problem with
I'm
the
sorry,
contractor,
yeah.
not the property owner. The property owner is now struggling to get this corrected.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons for updating the code, was to give coverage to the residents to avoid an unscrupulous contractor taking advantage of it.
I just want to make sure that since we found, denied variance, that if we update this, that it's not going to be, because it's still standing the way it is.
Mhm.
So, okay.
I've got a question concerning code in general, and understand that if it's something that you need to get back to us on because you got to look at it, that's fine. I had a resident that approached me with all the weather, wind, and everything. some tree branches had fallen into their yard from another person's property. They went out and looked, they got concerned about the tree, and they're wondering what our codes say around, like what recourse does a resident have if they're concerned about somebody else's tree with regard to their property. So I wanted to pick your brain about that. If you need to get back with me,
No, that's really between private property owners.
okay, so there's nothing in our code
No.
that, okay.
Now, the only thing in our code is when that bush or tree interferes with line of sight for traffic. So if somebody has overgrown leather leaf viburnums at the corner of their lot and we can't see around the corner where the stop sign is, we would go out and tell them to cut them back.
Right.
But if we see a dead tree limb, we can say something to them about the danger of it falling, but between two private property owners, it's between two private property owners.
Very good. I will let them know. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Donlin? All right, thank you, sir. And Executive Committee, Mr. Van Harn, your committee met this evening. Do you have a report?
Yes, we met this evening, and the majority of the meeting was spent learning about the test and installation, potential installation of license plate readers in Gulf Manor. There was a lot of questions and answers. I can't really cover them all, but it was a very good education and discussion on that for the village. I'm not sure what the next steps are for that. For the more information at this point. So,
I know that I can have the administration speak to anything further than what I would say on it. One, I think a critical piece of info, or very important piece of information that was shared with us is that this isn't data that is individualized other than like the license plate number. And basically it's used in cases where there's been a stolen car that's been reported and the AI that's involved is able to say, hey, there's a stolen car that just came through your community. That's a use scenario of it. It's there's I believe I heard the committee express pretty much unanimity around their confidence in the anonymity of the privacy protections that are in place for that, which is always the question when we're talking about cameras reporting things. They answered questions about, our administration answered questions about how fast the process in terms of that we're writing up of data or of records retention within the village. So there was those kind of things that were covered.
and I appreciate that. It doesn't have facial recognition. It's really about generating pictures of a car and a license plate. And I wanted, that does actually, there's a lot of good concern about making sure where's the privacy work with the system and things like that. So.
And there was discussed the specific topic of, well, who watches the people who are supposed to be enforcing the privacy stuff? Like, so, and we went into some detail about that, which was also videotaped, I presume, the executive committee. Yeah. So people are interested in that, they can go back and look at the questions and answers.
So
Those questions.
the video of the license, so the video sees a license plate. It matches the database to see if that license plate has any notes on it. It pops up if there's an issue. The police department need to go to RCIC after that to determine whatever investigation needs to take place. So there are inherent fail-safes in RCIC in terms of authorization. Chief Campbell audits the information as to who's using it. The issue becomes, which is probably something we can address in the Records Commission, there's a 30-day cloud hold on that video and then it just automatically drops off. But the police department can choose to retain that information for their investigations. I would see that being controlled by our Records Commission policy, and that should be a part of what they propose to us for body cams and watch guard, I believe.
Correct. I mean, the company will only hold it for 30 days unless you make a request to download it. When we download it, it then goes in a different records retention schedule, which is part of an investigatory file for a criminal action. But during that 30-day window is the only time it would be available as a public record. And then again, looking at privacy issues, if somebody said, I'd like to see what license plate was outside my house when I was on vacation, we may not have access to that.
Well, they wouldn't see it.
But I mean, if they thought, oh, there's how I can catch somebody, we wouldn't see it because the system only triggers a license plate of interest. So there's a lot of natural protections in place, but the one protection is that these are automatically destroyed 30 days out, unless we make a request to pull it out of the system and retain it as a criminal investigation file.
And that comes into our system, or is it something they have that's separate from the?
They hold the cloud for 30 days
Right.
unless we make the choice to pull that down into our server for some
That's
reason.
held by us.
Then it's part of our records
Okay.
retention.
They would be considered our agent for that 30-day window.
Gotcha.
And so a lot of communities are going with this same company. So many communities are going to have to update their records retention policy concerning these automatic license readers and, as Mr. Hurth mentioned, body cameras. Because a lot of communities are moving in that direction. And we need to have very clear record retention policies because we're liable if it's destroyed and we don't have a record that says it's capable of being destroyed.
As we're developing that policy, what are the avenues for public input?
With the Records Commission, when we have a next Records Commission meeting, it's a public meeting. We would post it on the agenda and let people know if they want to participate to come to that meeting. We had a Records Commission meeting 2 months ago.
2 months ago, I think the next one probably is, I want to say it's either end of June or August.
Or
July.
September, yeah. I think it was 6 months out, so I think it's going to be August or September is our next one. I think we set the date even at the Records Commission meeting.
Yeah, I think you're right, it was 6 months.
Yeah.
So what we're waiting for, chief and his command staff are proposing what they want their policy to be. We'll pass legal counsel to see if it passes muster, and then we'll present that to council to make any comments or changes.
And we'll let the public know that's their avenue for comment. The date of that being August, September, whatever that is.
I already have a date.
Then Ron did report on the reliability audit, which you already heard about. And the only other point of note is that we rescheduled the employee performance review system meeting work session for Thursday, May 26th at 6:30 p.m.
Great.
That's the end of the report.
Records Commission is scheduled for September 12th.
September 12th for comments on record retention.
And we'll put out that agenda ahead of time so that people can see that that is a topic for discussion on that agenda. And we'll have a lot of communities be able to weigh in by then on what the best practice is. Because I was at a meeting 2 weeks ago with a number of communities, and we were talking about the common contract this company is sending out there. And rather than everybody weighing in, getting one contract that everybody agrees upon.
Right. One of the questions in the committee that I was interested in was concerning the safeguards that are in place where anyone accessing the system, that's tagged. You know who's going into the system and when they're going into that's what they're reporting. What I was concerned about is whenever a document is produced, for instance, if something was printed out, making sure that that activity is also tagged within the system. So you know if someone's printed something out, given the issue that when you have a paper document, that becomes harder to control as far as privacy than if something is just in a system that someone can look at, but you know when they're looking at it.
Well, and that goes with Mr. Hurth in the comment about RCIC. When they go into the Regional Computer Information Center, they log in.
Yeah.
We know who's logging in. They know what they're accessing. They know that information. So it's all police officers have to sign a contract with RCIC that they'll adhere to those rules. And that is you have to identify who you are and that you have to have a legitimate law enforcement purpose for it. So there's multiple layers those safeguards in place so this isn't just creating a big brother atmosphere.
So council may not be aware of this, but even logging into these computers, that's all tracked now. We know who logged in and when. So that's the same for all the police officers, anybody on staff, even you guys.
Yeah.
If
Well, I
you
believe
use
the
any of
same thing
these,
is like with doors, with access to the doors, right?
That's
You know,
track who's coming
as
and
far as
going.
your key fob or whatever, it tracks who's coming in and who's coming out. So that's all. So if something disappears between, you know, my coming into the building and my leaving the building, they know it was me. Right. Yeah, again, my concern is just wanting to get verification that it's also, because you could have a number of reputable people who are logging in, all right, all who had access to a particular document. Suddenly that document's around, you don't know who is actually the person who's not reputable now, because it could have been any one of those people. But if you have a system, which I think would be easy enough to make it smart enough, that if you're requesting to print something out, you're tagged, you know.
That
something
is
like that.
RCIC, and RCIC will alert, and that is absolute grounds of termination.
So those are the pieces, the fine details that I would be concerned are in place. Thank you. End of report? Appreciate it. And Planning Commission, my understanding is the next scheduled meeting is Monday, June 6th at 6:30 PM. Is there a report?
No report. I think the updated zoning code and information that Mr. Donaldson provided has been shown with what we've been working on for the past few months.
Great. Ms. Cheney, community engagement.
Education, the only thing I have is PRM LSDMC meets this Wednesday at 3. Ashley, do you have anything?
Thank you very much. And Finance Committee didn't meet this evening. Their next meeting is May 23rd at 6 PM.
Correct.
All right. Do we have any other announcements?
There's a financial audit committee meeting.
Do we have any announcements other than that we have a financial audit committee meeting on that 23rd, just before the finance committee meeting at 5:45. Then we have the finance committee meeting at 6, and then we have full council at 7 PM. Our next meeting is then June 13th, which we were talking about during the meeting with 5:30 executive, 6:30 finance, full council at 7:30. And what else were we talking on there? Or just, that was during the full
Budget
council?
hearing, zoning committee, commission hearing, and then we were piggybacking those to the other meetings we already had.
Right.
And I will not be available on the May 23rd, but I will have somebody from my office in my absence. Someone who's much better looking than I am and much younger.
So we'll probably need the legislation for authorizing the auditor's certificate for the levy.
Okay,
at
That's the
next
2 mil?
meeting.
The two, yeah.
2 mil renewal.
Was there an error above, there was an email where I think it said a 4 mil. Is that, or am I just remembering that incorrectly?
So that
I thought it was a 4 mil coming up, but guess I'm wrong.
For
I think that
the,
was an informal discussion.
Okay,
we'll verify that. They usually send us a note from the auditor's office that you have this
Okay.
levy up for renewal. So that may have already come in.
All right.
To Andy.
all right. Well, sorry for the confusion if I caused any. We're just trying to clarify. what my memory
But
was.
we will bring the legislation that night, which is just asking the auditor to certify it so that when we get to the June meeting, we can pass it in time to get it onto the ballot. Because it will be part of the budget. But right now, there's no indication of increasing. It's just a renewal of existing.
No, we just need to pass it
Mhm.
as a renewal.
Okay, any other business for council this evening? And if not, almost a record, I think, of early adjournment. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your service. Good evening.
Okay. engaged.
Oh, really? I don't think I knew that.
You did?
That's great.
Congratulations.